I'm talking with Pete Chatterton, photographer, videographer. People more so than ever have actually been video conferencing out of necessity due to social distancing. So there's a lot of people for the first time actually using video conferencing. Now, one of the things that you kind of notice is that this is really different than in talking to people in person or meetings and things like that. I asked Pete about some of the things that people can do, some easy tips that people can actually practice to make their videos, to make their video conferencing as professional as possible. And Pete, welcome. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for actually writing out these tips. And I just want to kind of elaborate on some of the things that you were talking about.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ron, and good to speak with you today. My quick tips would be about the angle of your camera to your face. If you're working off of your laptop, you don't really want to be on a table with your webcam pointed up, sort of looking up your nose. Never a professional look. So I always suggest grabbing a stack of books, throw your laptop on that stack of books, make sure your camera angle is at least at your eye level, if not a tiny little bit above that. That's my first tip for more professional video conferencing. And the other things that we go over in the document here is just light source and position. So you can see I've got a fairly large light source that's directional here to my camera left. You don't need to get that complicated. Just get yourself close to a window. Make sure it's open. If you have a north-facing window, that's kind of a pro tip because you get the nicest, most even light throughout the entire day.
Just expand on the camera angle there.
Keeping yourself directly in the center is what I always recommend, because then the subject, the person that's looking at you, doesn't have to wander around the screen with their eyes to find where you are. Right. Rule of thirds is a very, very common compositional technique, and that's placing yourself in the third of a frame. But we don't really need to be worried about compositional techniques so much as we need to be concerned with someone just looking at us directly and having the easiest time doing that. That's in the center.
Okay, so the camera should be placed slightly above your eyes?
It's always a little bit more flattering. That's why I think you see a lot of people taking selfies where they've got the camera up high and they're sort of taking the angle where the camera is facing down at the person. It just minimizes any sort of features that you might want to minimize. We're all a little self-conscious of our weight, so it minimizes that, and it just overall gives the face a more flattering look. So yes, either eye level or slightly above is perfect.
The distance away from the camera should be how far away from the person?
Fill the frame. You don't want to have your entire face filling up the screen because that could be distracting. I always suggest sort of looking at the framing that I have here, there's a little bit of comfortable room around me, but you can still see me very clearly. And it sort of mimics the amount of space you might have between yourself and somebody if you're sitting across from a desk.
Can you talk about audio?
Yes, in my case, I'm using an actual external shotgun microphone that's of high quality because I am in video production. However, it's really about proximity. So you just want to make sure that the placement of yourself and your voice is as close as possible to the microphone source that you're working with. So given that we're working with either a desktop computer or a laptop computer, or perhaps our phone, as long as you're following that compositional rule of filling the screen with your face, you should be close enough to that device in order to obtain reasonable quality audio. So it's going to sound clear just because you're close to the microphone source. Pro tip would be try to get in a quiet room. Don't do it in your kitchen where your fridge is maybe causing a hum. Don't do it if your kids are in the very next room. Try to find the quietest space that you can and try to get as close to the microphone as you can within reason.
We've talked about audio now. Now, let's talk about backgrounds.
Yeah, so I think I'm a photographer. That's where I started. I would say that that's my sort of main thing that I do. And every photography teacher, every good photography teacher that I've had, these words echo in my mind, and they will forever. Head in a clean spot. Head in a clean spot. What does that mean? It means that ideally you don't have anything intersecting with your body or your head that's going to compete for attention. So if I'm talking with somebody and they have got a very busy background, it is harder for me to focus on them. It also creates a lot of distractions visually, which translates and it makes it seem less professional. So behind me right here, I have a gray background. I've got a nice light source that instead of a light could just be a window. And watch what happens when I turn my light source off and I remove my background. It's not as magical as it appears. I've got a very, very busy office in the background, not to throw my wife under the bus, but it is hers. And we're actually in the middle of moving office right now, so it's extra messy. I think you can see that there's a very, very big difference between using the ambient light in the room to illuminate my face and also just using a very simple gray background to sort of clean things up and make things look more professional. So I'll just switch back and so we can see how it looked again before.
Wow, that's a
There,
huge
that's better.
difference. Yeah, that
Yeah.
absolutely is. That's a huge difference. Now the screen that you have, where do you get something like that?
Yeah, so again, I realize not everyone's going to want to buy this equipment or even really needs it. So this screen in particular is just a fold up sort of circular vinyl that I take around with me to photo shoots if I need to shoot something corporate on a clean background. However, my suggestion, and it's in the notes here as well, is just to use a white wall or any colored wall. Gray happens to be very neutral, as does white, so I recommend that the most. It looks the best with every kind of skin tone, and it looks the best with every kind of outfit. So it's really nice to have a neutral background, but as long as it's clean, any color will really do. And just try to think of something that's professional looking, distraction free.
Thank you very much, Pete. The tips are great, and I'm going to improve what I've actually have set up.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ron. My contact information will be below, and I do consulting work. Primarily, I'm a photographer, and I offer videography services, and I'm located in the Bowmanville area. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me and has a question, I'm happy to talk with you, and I'd love to help in any way that I can.
Thank you very much, Pete.
Thanks for having me, Ron.